Welcome back. Clear, simple, effective. Indian Polity. Hodge one book for UPSC.
And we are starting from the very beginning. Chapter 1, Historical Background of the Indian Constitution.
This is a quick revision video, so whether you have already read this chapter and want to revise it fast or you are studying it for the first time, this video is going to cover everything you need. Every important act, every important year, every important name, all in one place.
All right, let us get started.
Before India had a constitution, before we had a parliament, before we had elections, we had the British. And before the British left, they spent nearly 200 years writing laws, passing acts, and building systems, many of which quietly became the foundation of the Indian constitution we have today. So today's video is not just history. It is the origin story of India's democracy. We are covering Chapter 1 of Laxmikanth, Historical Background, the full thing, from the Regulating Act of 1773 all the way to the Indian Independence Act of 1947. Stay till the end. There's a quick revision at the close that will save you hours of rereading. Let us start from the very beginning. The British came to India in 1608, not as rulers, but as traders, through the East India Company. Queen Elizabeth I had given them a charter in 1600, a license to trade in India. For over 150 years, the company just traded. But in 1765, everything changed. After the Battle of Buxar and the Treaty of Allahabad, the company received the Diwani rights, meaning the rights over revenue and civil justice of Bengal, Bihar and Odisha. This was the moment the company stopped being a trading company and started becoming a territorial power. Then came 1858. The Sepoy Mutiny, also called the First War of Independence, shook the British so badly that the British Crown directly took over governance of India from the company. India was now ruled by the Crown directly until independence on 15 August 1947. With independence came the need for our own constitution. A Constituent Assembly was formed in 1946, and on 26 January 1950, the constitution came into force. But here is what most students miss. The Indian constitution did not appear from nowhere. It was deeply shaped by the laws the British passed during their rule. Let us go through them one by one. We divide British rule into two phases. First, Company rule from 1773 to 1858. Second, Crown rule from 1858 to 1947. Let us start with the Company Acts. The Regulating Act of 1773 is one of the most important acts for UPSC. Why? Because it was the first time the British government tried to regulate and control the East India Company. Three things it did that you must remember. First, it made the British government control the affairs of the East India Company in India. Second, it recognized, for the first time, the political and administrative functions of the company. Third, it laid the foundations of central administration in India. Now the specific features, listen carefully. 1. It designated the Governor of Bengal as the Governor-General of Bengal and created an Executive Council of 4 members to assist him. The very first Governor-General under this Act, Lord Warren Hastings. 2. It made the Governors of Bombay and Madras subordinate to the Governor-General of Bengal. 3. It established a Supreme Court at Calcutta in 1774, comprising 1 Chief Justice and 3 other judges. The first Chief Justice was Elijah MP. 4. It prohibited company servants from private trade or accepting gifts from Indians. 5. It strengthened British government control over the company by requiring the Court of Directors to report on revenue, civil, and military affairs.
Wait, so the Supreme Court system in India actually traces back to 1774?
Exactly. And that's the kind of connection UPSC loves to test. To fix the problems created by the Regulating Act of 1773, the British Parliament passed the Amending Act of 1781, also known as the Act of Settlement. Key points. It exempted the Governor-General and the Council from the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court for official acts. It excluded revenue matters from the Supreme Court's jurisdiction. It stated that Hindus would be tried under Hindu law and Muslims under Mohammedan law. Appeals from provincial courts would go to the Governor-General in Council. Now comes the Pitt's India Act of 1784. This act introduced the concept of double government. Here is how it worked. The Court of Directors handled commercial affairs. The newly created Board of Control handled political affairs. The Board of Control supervised civil and military administration in India. Two important facts. For the first time, company territories were called British possessions in India. The British government got supreme control over company affairs. Act of 1786. In 1786, Lord Cornwallis became Governor-General of Bengal. Before accepting the post, he demanded two powers. The power to override his council in special cases. The position of Commander-in-Chief. The Act of 1786 granted both powers. Charter Act of 1793. The Charter Act of 1793 extended Cornwallis's overriding power to all future Governors-General and Governors. It strengthened control over Bombay and Madras. Extended the company's trade monopoly for another 20 years. Declared that the Commander-in-Chief would not automatically be a council member. Charter Act of 1813. The Charter Act of 1813 is important for 5 reasons. It abolished the company's trade monopoly in India. However, monopoly over tea and China trade continued. It asserted the sovereignty of the British Crown over company territories. It allowed Christian missionaries to enter India. It promoted Western education. Charter Act of 1833. This act was the final step towards centralization in British India. Key features. The Governor-General of Bengal became the Governor-General of India. Lord William Bentinck became the first Governor-General of India. Bombay and Madras lost legislative powers. The East India Company became a purely administrative body. Laws made after this act were called acts instead of regulations.
So from 1833 onwards, the company was basically a government pretending to be a company.
That is actually a very accurate description. Charter Act of 1853. The Charter Act of 1853 was the last Charter Act. Important features. It separated legislative and executive functions for the first time. It introduced open competition for civil services. This led to the Macaulay Committee of 1854. It introduced local representation in the Legislative Council. The Crown Rule, 1858 to 1947. After the revolt of 1857, the British Crown directly took over India. Government of India Act of 1858. This act transferred power from the East India Company to the British Crown. Important points. The Governor-General became the Viceroy of India. Lord Canning became the first Viceroy. Double government ended. The Office of Secretary of State for India was created. A 15-member council was formed to assist him. Indian Councils Act of 1861. This act started the process of including Indians in administration. Key points. Indians were nominated to legislative councils. Legislative powers were restored to Bombay and Madras. Legislative councils were created for Bengal, Punjab, and northwestern provinces. The Viceroy could issue ordinances during emergencies. Indian Councils Act of 1892. This act increased non-official members in councils, allowed councils to discuss budgets and ask questions, introduced indirect election through nomination. Indian Councils Act of 1909, Morlamento reforms. This act introduced communal electorate for Muslims. Important facts. Council size increased. Indians entered executive councils. Satyendra Prasad Sinha became the first Indian member of the Viceroy's Executive Council. Lord Minto became known as the father of communal electorate. Government of India Act of 1919, Montagu-Chelmsford reforms. This act introduced diarchy in provinces. Provincial subjects were divided into transferred subjects, reserved subjects. Other features. Bicameralism introduced. Direct elections introduced. Communal representation expanded. Central Public Service Commission established in 1926. Simon Commission, 1927. The Simon Commission had 7 British members and no Indians. As a result, Indians boycotted it. Its recommendations later influenced the Government of India Act of 1935. Communal Award, 1932. The Communal Award was announced by British Prime Minister Ramsay MacDonald. It extended separate electorates to depressed classes. Gandhiji opposed it and began a fast unto death. This eventually led to the Pune Pact. Of India Act of 1935. This was the most important constitutional act before independence. Key features. Proposed an All India Federation. Introduced federal, provincial, and concurrent lists. Introduced provincial autonomy. Introduced bicameralism in some provinces. Extended communal representation. Established the RBI. Established Federal Court in 1937. Extended voting rights. Indian Independence Act of 1947. This act ended British rule in India. Key points. India became independent on 15 August 1947. India and Pakistan were created as two dominions. Office of Viceroy abolished. Lord Mountbatten became the first Governor-General of independent India. Constituent assemblies were empowered to frame constitutions. Constituent Assembly. The Constituent Assembly was where the Indian Constitution was actually drafted. Important facts. Idea proposed by M.N. Roy in 1934. Accepted through Cabinet Mission Plan in 1946. First meeting held on 9th December 1946. Temporary Chairman, Dr. Sachidananda Sinha. Permanent President, Dr. Rajendra Prasad. Drafting Committee Chairman, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. The Constitution was adopted on 26 November 1949. Enforced on 26 January 1950. Original Constitution. 395 articles. 8 schedules. Time taken. 2 years, 11 months, 18 days. They wrote the world's longest constitution in under 3 years, and I can't finish one assignment on time. That comparison hurts, but it. Quick revision time. 1773, Regulating Act, Governor-General of Bengal, Supreme Court at Calcutta. 1781, Act of Settlement, Supreme Court Limitations. 1784, Pitt's India Act, Double Government. 1813, Charter Act, Trade Monopoly ended except tea and China. 1833, Charter Act, Governor-General of India created. 1853, Charter Act, Open Competition for Civil Services. 1858, GOI Act, Crown Rule begins. 1861, Indian Councils Act, Indians enter lawmaking. 1909, Morlemento reforms, separate electorate. 1919, Montagu-Chelmsford reforms, diarchy. 1935, GOI Act, Provincial Autonomy, RBI, Federal Court. 1947, Indian Independence Act, India becomes independent. Constituent Assembly. First meeting, 9th December 1946. Constitution adopted, 26th November 1949. Constitution enforced, 26th January 1950. That was Chapter 1, Historical Background, complete from start to finish. If this video helped you, subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon. In the next video, we will cover Chapter 2, Making of the Constitution, in the same detail. Comment below and tell me which act confuses you the most. And share this with one UPSC aspirant friend. See you in the next video.